tried to come up with the cheesiest thing we could, and
from the highest of heights to the depths of the sea. Creation's revealing your majesty. From the colors of fall to the fragrance of spring. Every creature unique in a song that it sings, all exclaiming, indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. All powerful, am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, oh so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to the earth you created, all full of sin became one. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. strength. We bow down and worship Him now. How great, how awesome is He. And together we sing, holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with His glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with His glory. The earth is filled with His glory. We stand and lift up our hands, for the joy of the Lord is our strength. We bow down and worship Him now. How great, how awesome is He. Together we sing, everyone sing, holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with His glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with His glory. The earth is filled with His glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with His glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with His glory. The earth is filled with His glory. It's rising up all around. It's the anthem of the world's renown. And it's rising up all around. It's the anthem of the Lord's renown. And it's rising up all around. It's the anthem of the Lord's renown. And it's rising up all around. It's the anthem of the Lord's renown. And together we sing, everyone sing, holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with His glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with His glory. The earth is filled with His glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with His glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with His glory. The earth is filled with His glory. Yes, the earth is filled with His glory. Who is this King of glory that pursued me with His love? fills me with each hearing of His softly spoken words. My conscience a reminder of forgiveness that I need. Who is this King of glory? Who offers it to me? Who is this King of angels? Oh, blessed Prince of Peace, revealing things of heaven and all its mysteries. My spirit's ever longing for His grace in which to stand. This King of glory, Son of God and Son of man. His name is Jesus, precious Jesus, Lord Almighty, King of my heart, King of glory. With the strength and majesty and wisdom beyond measure, the gracious King of kings, Lord of earth and heaven, the creator of all things. Who is this King of glory? He's everything to me. His name is Jesus, precious Jesus, Lord Almighty, King of my heart, King of glory. Lord of earth and heaven, the creator of all things. Who is this King of glory? He's everything to me. His name is Jesus, precious Jesus, Lord Almighty, King of my heart, King of glory. His name is Jesus, precious Jesus, Lord Almighty, King of my heart, King of glory. Sing just a voice. His name is Jesus, precious Jesus, Lord Almighty, King of my heart, King of glory.
Second Songs, chapters 2, verses 15 through 17. And this is where Solomon has proposed to this young lady. And we're going to talk about that tonight. But it's really interesting because I get to do weddings fairly often, and it seems like I'm doing more and more weddings. But it's really funny Because from the time that girls are like 2 or 3 years of age, they start planning their wedding. They just do. They start planning their wedding. I was at a wedding here not long ago, and the flower girl was like, she was probably 3, and she was practicing walking down the aisle. And she was just kind of doing this thing, and she was practicing. And then when she got down to the aisle, she gathered up the girls around her, and then she threw the bouquet over her shoulder. And I was like, guys don't have a chance. We're hooked. I mean, they like plan this thing, and we think we're all in control, and we think we're Enrique Suave, and we're not. They've got the whole thing figured out, and we're just like fish, man. And they're just baiting us and reeling us in. But the funny part is that girls think about the wedding, and I mean, they plan it, and they pick out dresses. My daughter's 14. She gets bridal magazines and looks through them and is like, look at this dress, look how pretty, you know? But guys are thinking about the wedding night. They're like, yeah. You know, you go into the girls' side where all the bridesmaids are and everything, and they're like, oh, you're so lucky to be getting married. And you go into the guys' side, and they're just like, dude, you're just lucky. Tonight is your honeymoon. You're the man. They're giving each other high fives and all that kind of stuff. And so we're going to continue talking about that. But tonight we're going to talk about how you can screw up a relationship. Have you guys ever screwed up a relationship? All right, like me and 3 other people. Liars. I know that that's not true. When Linnea and I were dating, I had this really cool idea that we were going to go swimming. And we were going to go to the swimming pool that wasn't really open, but we thought that would be kind of fun. And so I had the whole thing planned out. We had a picnic basket. I had a convertible Volkswagen. I thought I was really cool. I thought I was going to take her on this like really cool date. And so I take her on this date, and as I'm going over the fence, because the pool's not open, did I use that right? Somebody's like, no, I didn't. But because the pool's not open, I kick this huge thing of wasp nests. And wasps go absolutely everywhere but towards me. They attack her. She gets bit 6 times. It was a horrible date for her. And, yeah, it stung. She didn't get bit. Wasps don't bite, they sting. It was a horrible date for her, and still when we look back, that's one of her bad memories. And I did plenty of things to screw up our relationship. And so right now, I want to take you to a couple that they're on a date, they're at dinner, and sometimes us guys just screw things up. Check this out.
Thanks for taking me out tonight. That was sweet of you to offer.
I couldn't miss the opportunity to take out the most beautiful woman in the world. Here, let me get your seat.
Wow, thanks. I've never been here before.
Oh, this is one of my most favorite restaurants. They have the best pasta here. You'll love it.
All my old boyfriends always took me to the most dumbest places, but you seem to have good taste.
I chose you, didn't I?
Oh.
All right, what can I get you for dinner tonight?
I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to look yet.
I'll go first. For starters, I like to have the garlic bread with dipping sauce, please. And for my entree, I'd like to have the pasta primavera, extra primavera sauce. And for dessert, I'd like to have the world famous tiramisu. Can you put like a little bit extra caramel on it? Yeah. And could I get some peach raspberry Italian soda, please? Thanks.
All right, and what about for you, ma'am?
I'm sorry, I just have a hard time making quick decisions.
Maybe she can go back and get her drinks and come back later.
Oh, no, it's okay. I don't want to keep you waiting. I guess I'll just have the house salad with fat-free Italian on the side and a Diet Coke, please.
Is that it? Why don't you get some pasta or something?
I'm just not that hungry.
All right, I'll get your appetizers and be right back.
It's a shame about those Yankees.
Yeah, ever since Elway retired, they haven't been the same since.
Right.
where do you work?
Oh, I work for the city.
Groundskeepers for the parks, right? I just love their flowers.
No, I'm more in the cleanup and disposal area. Anyways, you work at that girly store in the mall, right? What's it called?
Afterthoughts?
Yeah, how's that going for you?
Fine.
Do you have any hobbies?
Yeah, I guess there's a reason why I work at the mall. I just love to shop. Well, it's more of a weakness, really, than a hobby. What about you?
Oh, yeah. I love to hunt. It's just the feeling of putting on that camo, spraying yourself down with deer urine, and the sneaking, and then the gun, boom! Oh, it's awesome. I love it.
Really? I've never even held a gun before.
Oh, for real? Yo, I gotta take you sometime. I mean, the first time you're out, it's cold, and you're holding that gun, and you're shaking, and then you see this big, beautiful buck, and then you're holding it, and it's like, boom! And then as the smoke clears, you can see it go over the hill, and you're like, I know I got this. So you walk down, and then you got this is where the hunt starts. You find this blood trail, and then you look, and you're like, it'll be little drops here and there. All of a sudden, it'll get thicker and thicker, and then there'll be like air bows in it, and then you know you got it good right there. And then you keep going, and there'll be pieces of lungs here and there. You're like, yes! And then all of a sudden, you see this big, beautiful animal, and you're like, oh, yes. And then its tongue's hanging out, just blood everywhere. And you go up to it, and you pick it up by its antlers, and it's like God's gift to you, and it's like, oh, oh yeah.
Here's your appetizers.
And we're done. Are you sure?
All right. Everybody's done things to screw things up. I want to kind of prep you on this because this has been a great study for me. That regardless if you're married or single, I think that all of this applies. This afternoon I was with my wife, and one of the things that has really caught me through the talk was just respect. Just how you treat your wife, how you treat a lady. And I'm the kind of guy that when I get someplace, I get out of the car and I go. I'm on a mission, and especially if it has to do with clothes. Clothes is just a thing that you walk in, you pick out what you want, and you get out. So as soon as, yeah, ladies are like, that's not true. So as soon as I get out of the car, I'm probably 20 steps in front of my wife, and all of a sudden it hits me. You're not supposed to walk in front of your wife. You're supposed to walk beside her. And that's what we're called to do. And so I turned around and I waited, and she had no idea what was going through my mind. But I just gave her the look like, I love you. And she thought, hey, he loves me. And that's all that needed to happen. But I just really want to say that regardless if you're married or if you're single, I think you can really apply these talks. And next week we're going to talk about sex. And this week we're going to kind of begin to talk about sex. And so I'd like for you to turn with your Bibles. I'd like for you to flip over to Song of Songs, chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. I'm going to read that to you. And it says this. It says, quick, catch all the little foxes before they ruin the vineyard of your love. For the grapevines are all in blossom. It says, my lover is mine and I am his. He feeds among the lilies. Before the dawn comes and the shadows flee away, come back to me, my love. Run like a gazelle or a young stag on the rugged mountains. And you see, here's what's happened. Solomon has proposed to this young lady. They've fallen in love. They've gone on dates. It's been very romantic. At times, it's been very sexual. And they've actually paused and stopped and said, let's not go there. You guys have read that. We've talked about that. And now they've come to the place where he has said, man, I'm so in love with you. And she's declared her love. And they've decided that they want to get married. And he's proposed to her. And in proposing to her, all of a sudden, there's this security that comes into her life that she feels really, really good about this relationship. She feels like, I don't have to worry anymore. and the security's there, and everything's going along pretty well. And then all of a sudden, he goes to prepare a place for her. Because in the Jewish custom, what would happen is a guy would propose to a girl, but he couldn't marry her right off the bat. There had to be this waiting period. And the waiting period wasn't just a waiting period. He was going to declare his love for her by going to prepare a place for her, a house for her. He would go, and then when the time was right, he would usually come in the middle of the night, and he would come with his whole group of what we would call groomsmen. Sometimes there would be 20, 30, 40 people, and they would come and they'd be banging pots and making noise and declaring his love for her and waking everybody up. Almost like Johnny Carino's when they sing happy birthday to somebody. Same sort of deal. But he's going and he's declaring his love for her, and he's coming for her in the middle of the night. But not until he's ready, not until he has a place for her. And so he takes off, and he's gone a really, really long time. And all of a sudden, what you see happen in this part of the story is all of a sudden, the longer he's gone, the more insecure she becomes. And that's what happens. For girls, whenever the guy's gone for a long time, all of a sudden she begins to wonder, is he really going to come for me? Is he really going to come for me? And so then she goes out looking for him. And what she's saying is this, is she's saying, would you please not be gone a long time? Would you make this quick? Would you come back before the sun comes up, before the shadows of darkness go away? Would you come back for me? And we're going to check this out. Because there's a lot of things that couples do to screw up relationships, right? A lot of things that couples do to screw up relationships. Whether you are single or you are married, there is still plenty of opportunity on both sides of the fence to screw up relationships. And as a matter of fact, that we can look at statistics and say that 50% of all marriages end in divorce, which tells you that 50% of those that got married, I believe that 100% of all people get married and they think to themselves, this is going to last forever, or they wouldn't be getting married. And then somewhere along the line, things go awry, and all of a sudden they find themselves in a situation that they didn't desire to be in. And the very first thing that I think happens is this. I think the first thing that kills relationships, it's really simple. It's unresolved issues. Unresolved issues are the things that kill relationships. Verse 15, quick, catch all the little foxes before they ruin the vineyards of your love. You see, here's what he's saying. He's saying, catch all the little foxes that ruin the vineyard of your love, because love is ruined by unresolved issues. How many of you guys have ever had issues in your life that you just kept ignoring and ignoring and ignoring? And you think that they're going to go away. That you think that one of these days they're just going to go away. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'll give you a couple examples. I'm going to help you think of some examples. Have you ever had a credit card that you keep thinking you're going to pay off? Right? Have you ever had a credit card that you keep thinking you're going to pay off and you don't? And all of a sudden it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And pretty soon you actually, even maybe you've stopped using it, but you end up owing more on it than when you started. That you maybe have made your payment and everything, and it just keeps going up. The debt ratio just keeps going up. I'm going to give you one, guys. Guys, I really want you to catch this. Because there's a lot of guys that I talk to, and they think their life is going to get going to be better when they get married. And what they're really thinking about is their thought life. That their thought life is going to be better because where they used to have to look at things to get sexual gratification, now they've got a wife, and it's going to be good. And guys are like, yes, I'm going to be married. And they don't take care of that issue. And you know what? When you get married, you don't leave that stuff. The person that stands before you, when I do a wedding, and I have two people that are standing before me, everything that they came down the aisle with, they will leave the aisle with. The only difference now is they're married. And you see, and guys think that thing's going to work itself out. It's not going to work itself out till you work it out. It's not going to go away till you address it, till you look it in the eyes and say, I'm not going down that road anymore. You see, ladies, that so many ladies, they get married, and one of the reasons they get married is because of this insecurity issue, that they don't want to be 30 and single, that they want to get this thing taken care of because there's that insecurity issue. And that if you think that getting married is going to resolve the insecurity issue, you're wrong. That is resolved before you get married. You take care of the issues. The things that kill relationship are unresolved issues. Remember 2 weeks ago when I said, at the end of that message, I said, one of the things that you need to do if you are in a relationship is you need to have a talk. You need to have the talk of all talks. The talk where you sit down and you say, hey, this is my past. These are my issues. You need to lay it all on the line. You see, if you don't work out your past, then your past has the ability to screw up your future. Have you ever seen that? Have you ever watched that in relationships where you see people that they just keep not dealing with the past, they just keep not dealing with the past, and all of a sudden they're in the present, but the present is now messed up by the past decisions that they've made, that they've chosen not to address? It's almost like this. A couple months ago, my son was shopping for a car. And so he had just a couple bucks. He didn't have a lot of money. And so we went to the auction and we found a car. And when that car came around, we bid on it and we got it. We went home with a Toyota Celica 1987, blue. That's what we went home with. And it wasn't 2 days later that the clutch went out on that car. But you know what? It really wasn't that big a deal. Because you knew what you were buying, right? You knew what you were getting. But there is something that's really, really bad when you go out and you buy a really nice, shiny car. And you're looking at it and you're thinking, man, that's really nice. And the person that you're buying it from, they're just telling you this is the best car they've ever had. And they've cleaned it up. They even took that spray stuff and they sprayed down the engine. And the engine looks great. And you walk around, you kick the tires a little bit. And the tires have had extra just shine put on them, and they've been waxed, and they look great. And you take that car home, and you are expecting that you bought a great car. And if you have the same issues with that car that I had with the car that we bought my son, you would be ticked off. Why? Because somebody deceived you, right? And that when you don't deal with issues in a relationship, what you're really offended about isn't necessarily the issue. It's the deception that goes into the relationship, right? Isn't that true? A few years ago, not even a few years ago, yeah, probably a couple years ago. A couple years ago, I'm really going through probably, I would almost call it an identity crisis. I don't know what brought it on, but there was a period of my life, and I really began to go through this really searching time, almost an identity crisis. And the issue that I was struggling with internally was this. Am I the person that people believe me to be? I'm not going out doing anything that's sinful. Not to say that I don't have sin. We all do. We all have our struggles. But there was this thing in my life that I was going through, and the struggle that I was really struggling with was, am I the person that people believe me to be? And the reason why is this. Because when you are not the person that people believe you to be, you are leading people down into a web of deception. And that people need to know who you are. And you see, what happens in relationships is this. We do the shiny car routine. I mean, you put on your best clothes, you put on your best smile, you laugh at the stupidest jokes. And then you go home and you tell your buddies, you're like, dude, you would not believe that this was funny. You know what I'm saying? And you set yourself out there to offer the very best of who you are, but so much of who you're offering yourself to be is really not who you are. This whole scenario, this happens a lot, where girls will go out on a date, and they're like, no, really, I'm not eating anything tonight. And you know that when they get home, they're having like a big, huge steak with potato and sour cream and butter. You know that's going on. And they're like calling their friends like, dude, I am so hungry. I'm famished. You know? The second part of verse 15 says, "For your grapevines are all in blossom." I want you to hear this. Relationships were created to blossom. That's what they were created to do. They were created to blossom, to produce happiness. Good relationships should produce good fruit. I shared this with you a couple of weeks ago. But I believe this. I believe that if you have a good relationship and your relationship is based upon God, then your relationship should have the characteristics of God that we find in Galatians 5:22. Your relationship should show love. It should have joy. It should have peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And I really guarantee you, I really want you to do this. If you are in a relationship, you need to examine it based upon Galatians 5:22. Does it cause you to love more? Does it cause you to have more patience, more goodness, more gentleness, more self-control? Because if it doesn't, you are in the wrong relationship. And if you are in a marriage relationship and your relationship does not exhibit those characteristics found in Galatians 5:22, then you have got to do everything you can to bring your relationship back into a relationship that honors God. Anything and everything that you need to do to bring your relationship back into a relationship that honors God. And sometimes that is this. Sometimes you don't control those issues at all. Maybe those issues are so far out of the realm that you don't control. You've got to lay that back down to God. You've got to say, Lord, here's our struggles. This is where we're at. This is what we've got to do. I can tell you that in my wife and I's second year of marriage, we honestly didn't know if we were going to make it. That we came into our second year, and our second year was absolutely tremendously hard. And maybe you're saying, man, it is your second year. I know. But it was huge. And there came a place where we had to just sit down and look each other in the eyes and say, you know what? These are the areas that I've wounded you in. I'm so sorry. And that she had to look at me and say, these are the areas I've wounded you in. I am so sorry. And you see what happens in marriage oftentimes is this. That two people come together as one. But the longer they are together, the more that they begin to just kind of do their own thing. Do their own thing. And then pretty soon they look across the table and they wonder, who is this person I married? Or who is the person that sits on the other end of the table? Because it's not the person I married. And I believe that when a couple commits themselves in marriage, that God binds them together. And that God has the ability to redeem whatever the enemy has ripped off. But what has to happen is this. You've got to come to the place in your relationship where you realize the person you're married to is not the person who's your enemy. There is an enemy and he's out to get you, but it's not the person who sits across from you. And you've got to come to the place where you decide that I will no longer walk ahead of my wife, but I'm going to walk beside my wife, and I'm going to stand beside my wife, and I'm going to die to myself for my wife. And that she makes that same proclamation, that this is the person who I am going to die to myself to bring honor to. And you see, and when you make that decision, all of a sudden, when you make that decision, that all of a sudden God can begin to bring healing and those wounded hearts and those wounded hurts, that all of a sudden those begin to disappear. Dan was talking this weekend, and he was talking about how you renew a wineskin. And if you missed it, what he was talking about was in the days of Christ, in that era, that they would make these wine pouches out of animal hide. And they didn't want to kill an animal every time they needed a wine pouch. So what they would do is when that wine pouch was empty, and if it got dry, what they would do is they would take that wine pouch, they would put it in a river, and water would run through it. And part of the water running through it was the process, but the water running over it was the other process. And when you have the Holy Spirit that runs through you, and when you have the Holy Spirit that runs over you, all of a sudden you will be renewed and you will be redeemed. And if that's on the side of marriage, God will redeem and renew on the side of marriage, but He will also renew and redeem on the side of singleness. That there are a lot of people that have gone through single relationships and maybe they didn't do it the way that they know that they should have done it, or maybe they look back now and they think, oh God, if I would have only known, I could have honored you in this area. If you will take your life and you will place it back and firmly in the hands of God, that God will renew and redeem you, because that's what He does, because that's who He is. That's His character. He makes all things new. You see, here's what happens. When we take unresolved issues, we leave the back door open. You guys know what that is? That you leave the back door open. You leave the enemy an opportunity to take pop shots at you. When you come to a relationship and you leave those things unresolved, the enemy will always have a back door. The back door sounds something like this. He only married you because you guys got pregnant. And so for 20 years, I've known couples that were married for 20, 25 years. I have a friend, he was married for 25 years. And do you know what his excuse was for leaving his wife? We got pregnant. You don't think you could have resolved that issue in 25 years of marriage? How long did you let the enemy hang on to that one? How long has the enemy been using that one in your marriage? How long has he been beating you up with that and been beating your wife up with that? That's why? Give me a break. At some point, you close the door on those issues. At some point, guys, we are caused to take a stand and face the things that we've done wrong in the past right in the eyes and resolve them. And stand for what is true and what is right and what is godly. Don't let the enemy beat you up on the things that are in the past. If you've surrendered them to God. If you haven't surrendered them to God, you need to do it, because you're not going to get past them until you do. Amen, Paul. That was good. The second thing that I believe kills relationships, which leads right off that first one, and it's lack of trust. That is the second thing that kills relationships. You see, he had proposed to her. When I proposed to my wife, we were in the jewelry store. We were in Washington, D.C. We were in some mall that I've never been to and never been back to. That I'd never been to before and never been back to. And we're walking through this mall, and we're walking through this jewelry store. And we're sitting there and we're looking at rings, and we're talking about getting married, and we know that we're headed to that. And it's all those googly feelings that you feel, and you walk in and you start looking at rings and you just feel like you're in love. And I bent down on my knee in this store and I said, will I marry you? She looked at me and she said, what? I said, will I marry you? I was nervous. The attendants looked at me and was just laughing. And I said, what? When you propose, you're not supposed to get laughed at. And then they repeated back to me what I said. I said, okay, you can laugh. It's all right. But you see, she says, my lover is mine and I am his. Here's what she's saying. She said, I'm good. This guy is the guy I've been waiting for. He's godly. He's romantic. He has control. He's a billionaire. He was the richest man to ever live. But she was so excited about their relationship. My lover is mine and I am his. He feeds among the lilies. Do you know what that means? It means that she didn't worry about their relationship because he hung out with men of character. He feeds among the lilies. She was using this description because lilies are pure, they're white, they're beautiful. And she is using this character to describe his friends. He feeds among the lilies. That when he needs advice, he goes to these guys that they have godly character, they have godly advice, that they don't take him and tempt him. I watch guys all the time. They're hanging out with their buddies. They're engaged. And their buddies are trying to take them to the bar. Their buddies are trying to take them out to the strip joint. Their buddies are tempting them. Their buddies are trying to just see how much character they really have. Ladies, hear me on this. If you don't trust the guy's friends, you better be careful of the guy. Because he is going to surround himself with men of the same character. That is how it works. That he is going to choose to hang out with guys that he is like and that he wants to be like. And if you don't trust the guy's friends, you better be careful. Guys, I'm going to tell you the same thing. That if you don't like her friends, if you think that her friends are mean and nasty, then you better find a different girl, because she is going to surround herself with people that are just like she is. You see, you shouldn't have to worry if the guy that you're going to marry is going to go out for a one-night stand, because his buddies are going to get him so drunk and that he's not going to know where he is or who he's with. And so he's going to be with whoever he's with, wherever he's at. You shouldn't have to worry about that. You see, a man is only as good as the men that he hangs out with. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. See, if you think your guy is a good guy and he's hanging out with bad people, I'm guaranteeing you that 99.999% of the time, his character is going to be corrupted. It is not going to corrupt the bad character. That's just the way our human nature is. You see, when she says, my lover is mine and I am his, she's secure because he's made a commitment to her. And when you make a commitment to get married, you didn't just throw that out there. You made a promise. You made a promise. And you see, when you made a commitment to get married, you made that promise. You didn't just make that promise to some little girl. You made that promise to God. And when you wear that ring upon your finger, you have made a declaration that your heart is been given away, that you're no longer on the market, that I've got a commitment. I show that. I wear that on my finger, and you don't have to worry about that anymore. That when you're not together, there should be no fears because you're apart. Because you made a commitment. And I believe that that applies not just before marriage. Man, that applies after marriage, guys. That you have made a commitment. And you see, what we want to do is we want to only apply it after we're married, after we walk down the aisle. If you come to the place and you're in that engagement, you keep your word. Now, if your relationship doesn't work out, and we're going to talk about that in a second, because there are many relationships that don't work out in the engagement period. And that's why we don't cross the lines. That's why we don't break trust just because we're engaged. Because when you're engaged, all of a sudden, it becomes really easy to rush your relationships. It becomes really easy to rush your relationships. And I believe that's the third thing that kills relationships, is when you rush your relationships. You see, here's what happens. Check this out. I want you to watch this. And I actually want you to go down from, I'm going to paraphrase chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. So he is promoted. He has asked her to marry him. He has gone off to prepare a place for her. And she begins to get nervous. Before the dawn comes and the shadows flee away, come back to me, my love. Run like a gazelle or a young stag on the rugged mountains. She's saying, be swift. Let's not let this take a long time. And you see, what happens is that when people get engaged, they begin to rush the relationship. They move in together. Did you know that we already know that 50% of marriages that get married have a real great chance of not making it? But did you know that people that move in together, this came out today. This was statistics that came out today. 60% of people that move in together have an even additional 60% chance that they will divorce than those that just get married. That you increase your chances of divorce rate. Why? because there is nothing sacred in the marriage. You gave it all away. You played house. And maybe you're here tonight and you're living together. I'm not going to pull any punches. You put yourself at a greater risk when you move in together than when you hold godly values and hold sacredism high. And you hold your standards high. And you say, we are not going to cross these lines. You see, when you begin to share your money together, it just screws things up. When you begin to share your house together and you share your body together before you're married, it just screws things up. When you rush into your relationship, it's kind of like this. It's like picking fruit before it's ripe. At the end, you get it and you think that it's going to be really great, and you open it up, and it's just not what you thought it was going to be. And then what happens? Anytime you come across fruit that's not real ripe, what do you usually do with it? You usually don't eat it. You usually put it away and get something else. And I just want to share something with you here. Because what we do is we put unrealistic expectations on each other. And I want to be really, really blunt with you. And we've had some pretty good conversations here in the past couple weeks. And you see, when you put unrealistic expectations upon the person you're dating, the person you're courting, you set them up for a fall and you set yourself up for a fall. Guys, she may not ever cook like your mother. Some of you guys are going, thank God for that. Have you tasted my mother's cooking? Not so good. Guys, he may not be the mechanic like your father was. He may not have all those things. And that when you begin to set those expectations upon each other, you only set yourself up for falls. And you begin to rush your relationship. But I want to talk to you for a second. And I really have struggled with how I would approach this. But I think that there is an unrealistic expectation that we need to talk about. And the unrealistic expectation has to do with sex. Because I watch this happen all the time too. I watch girls who have grown up in the church, and the church has this real tendency not to talk about it. Right? Maybe it's just the church I grew up in. Maybe you guys have maybe you guys are good to go. But they have this real unrealistic expectation, and it's kind of like everything is don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And I'm not saying do it, okay? You're not getting permission from me. But then what happens is this, is that the Bible is clear, keep the marriage bed holy. But one of the things that we think is holy is not talking about it. And that's just not true. Okay? Because then what we do is we set these really high expectations for the honeymoon. And we set these things up where it's like pure, 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 not okay, not okay, not okay, now it's okay. And the girl goes into her honeymoon, and there's this major league pressure on her to be something she's been told all of her life not to be. And all of a sudden there comes in guilt and condemnation in there. Or there comes in there just a horrible experience. And you see what happens is this. Ladies romanticize about the honeymoon and how it's going to just be this major league romantic time. And how can I say this politely? It could be over a lot quicker than you really think. And guys go into this whole thing thinking this is going to be this really phenomenal sex thing. And this young lady has come into this thing, and she has been told her whole life not to turn on the keys to this faucet, not to turn on the faucet yet. Not to turn on the faucet yet. And then all of a sudden it's okay. And I watch a lot of people come home from their honeymoon really actually kind of screwed up. Does that make sense? And I'm going to tell you how to get through that. Because the one thing that a couple needs to begin to do as they hit that romanticism, as they hit that place where you could be the one for me, you begin to make plans for your wedding, you need to have a lot of frank discussions about sex. You need to have a lot of frank discussions about sex. You need to have discussions on things that you like, things that you don't like, things that you would like to try, things that you wouldn't like to try, things that you think are honoring and how you want to be honored. Because the one thing that doesn't happen is we don't ever have those discussions. And then what happens is instead of this thing coming together and being a holy thing, this thing actually, which is very God-honoring and God in holy, the enemy takes you and begins to beat you up with it. And he begins to make you feel guilty, like maybe you weren't good enough. And especially if you have a past sexual history with somebody else. And now you're on your honeymoon. And you're into the sexual realm of your relationship. And I really believe that couples that are getting married need to have some great talks. Some of those talks, you're going to be like, dude, I just need to go home. I need to take a very cold shower. Whew! It's going to be good. The honeymoon's going to be great. Some of those talks are going to just be, wow, I didn't know that. Really? That's possible? Some of those talks are going to be like, oh, man, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have gone in that realm. But here's what I think happens. When you rush your relationship, you have a real tendency to ruin your relationship. You see, I believe that everything that God creates has integrity. I believe that everything that God creates has integrity. And I believe that God created relationships. And when you open up a godly relationship, you should find characteristics of God's hand. Because everything that God creates is always what you expect it to be. You see, if I open this up, you're not expecting an orange, are you? You're expecting a watermelon. You're expecting a watermelon, and when you open that up and you cut into it, it looks good, huh? We're going to taste it because I'm talking. Very good. I'm bringing some with me. But when you take a relationship that has godly characteristics and you open it up and you examine it, you know what you're going to find? God. That's what you're going to find. When you open up a watermelon and you examine it, what do you find? You find the hand of God. Because God always delivers exactly what you think He's going to deliver. He delivers integrity. He delivers character. He delivers honesty and purity. And tonight we're going to take communion. And I'm going to ask the worship team to come back up. And as we take communion, they're going to do one last song. And as they do one last song, we've got communion at the front, we've got communion at the back. I'm going to ask you to examine your life and your relationship. And if you have things in your past that you need to deal with, man, it's a great place and a great time to deal with them. If you have trust that you need to build in your relationship, that maybe you've broken trust, that you would commit your relationship to Christ tonight. Maybe you are one of the couples that I was talking about that you just have been rushing your relationship. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's sexual, but there's just rushing going on. And you need to bring that back and honor God. Maybe none of that's going on in your life. Maybe you're not in a relationship. But you know that tonight is the night that you're just going to come back. You're going to take your communion. You're going to take your bread. You're going to go back to your seat. We're all going to take it together. You're going to examine your life. And you're just going to say, Lord, you are my Lord. And tonight, I recommit my life to you. I recommit and I ante up and say, I will follow because I choose you today. All right? as the band plays, just feel free. There's communion back there. There's communion up here. And you can just kind of go wherever that makes you feel comfortable. But we want to take communion and just remember that God is our God. And we choose Him because He chose us. Amen?
All that is within, I lay it all down for the sake of you, my King. I'm giving you my dreams, I'm laying down my rights, I'm giving up my pride for the promise of new life. And I surrender all to you, all to you. And I surrender all to you, all to you.
just want everyone to bow their heads, please.